Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. After seeing 9 top 25 teams lose in Week 5, there were major changes to the AP poll, and of course, there were major changes to our own Gridiron Expert Top 25. So guys, today we are here to bring you our Week 6 GE Top 25 poll. Nothing to do with the AP poll, nothing to do with the coaches poll, strictly from us here at the Gridiron Expert, strictly based on what we think, strictly based on our metrics and our system. And of course, we're going to be providing you with these rankings every single Monday until the season ends. So again, guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down our brand new Top 25, heading into another weekend of college football. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. So much exclusive content there for you guys, all for you. And the big one, of course, is our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. If you have not signed up for those yet, you need to do that today. New analysis for both college and NFL picks coming out every single Wednesday, some of the best in the entire country for the last 3 years. So if you haven't done that yet, make sure to do that. Help us help you. One of the best decisions you'll make all season long. Expert picks over on thegridironexpert.com. So let's take a look at our rankings, guys. Let's just dive into it. We won't sugarcoat it. We won't dance around it. We'll just dive into it, kind of touching on each team very briefly. We'll start with the top 10. Let's start in that first column there. A lot of people, guys, are trying to make the argument that Georgia is the number one team in the country and not Alabama. And look, both teams are in a league of their own. It is Alabama and Georgia and then the rest of the field. For me, though, I can't put Georgia above Alabama until I have a reason to do that. And for me, that's probably going to be Alabama losing, right? If Alabama were to slip up, that's when I think I can finally put Georgia above them. Not to take anything away from Georgia. The gap between the Crimson Tide and the Bulldogs, very, very thin, very slim. Because again, these are the top two teams in the country, no doubt about it, and then it's everybody else. These two teams are on a collision course, a crash course to seem to meet in the SEC championship, and right now it seems that they're probably going to meet in the national championship as well, barring some unforeseen circumstance. But I've got Alabama at 1, Georgia at 2. Georgia's win over Arkansas, who was the 8th ranked team in the country last week, 37-0. Insanely impressive. I don't know if there's a team in the country that can score on this defense. I don't know if there's a team in the country that can beat Georgia other than maybe Alabama. And many want to say Georgia deserves that one spot because of the win over Arkansas. The thing is, Alabama's victory over Ole Miss, the number 12 team in the country, was equally as impressive. They were beating Ole Miss 35-0 at one point before the Rebels got a few late touchdowns to lose 42-21. Alabama dominated that game against one of the best offenses in the country. Their defense flexed their muscles. Georgia's defense flexed their muscles. But it will be Alabama at 1, Georgia at 2 in our rankings until we have a reason to bump the Crimson Tide from that spot. So Alabama 1, Georgia 2. Iowa at 3. The Hawkeyes are in at 5-0. The reason they're in at number 3, guys, is because their defense, just like Georgia, unbelievable. For 7 turnovers in their 51-14 win at Maryland. And while Maryland was not a ranked team, Maryland was an undefeated team going into that game. Iowa entered that game as what, a 3-point favorite, 4-point favorite? A lot of people were picking Maryland to pull off the upset over the Hawkeyes. Kirk Ferentz's squad pretty much said, hold my beer. We're going to take care of business. And they did. 7 turnovers, 5 interceptions off of Talia Tagovailoa. Who cares if their offense is just mediocre? Their offense doesn't have to do anything if their defense is setting them up in solid field position or scoring touchdowns off of those turnovers. So Iowa, they're elite. They're the real deal. And they've got a game against Penn State at Kinnick Stadium coming up this Saturday. Analysis on that later. But that's a game that will, again, solidify really who the best team in the Big Ten is, whether it's the Hawkeyes or the Nittany Lions, whoever wins that game. We've got Iowa in at 3, Cincinnati in at 4, above Penn State, right? Cincinnati comes in at 4 above Penn State because of their road win at Notre Dame. In the AP poll, Notre Dame was number 9. And Cincinnati was number 7. Cincinnati was even slightly favored. But to win that game 24-13 in South Bend, that is not an easy place to play. That is not an easy thing to do. They were up 17-0, ended up winning by 11 points. Cincinnati has now won all of their games by double digits. That includes the Notre Dame victory. That includes a 14-point victory at Indiana. Say what you want, and that's not impressive. It's still a group of 5 school over a power 5 school on the road by 2 touchdowns. Cincinnati's the real deal. They forced 3 turnovers against the Fighting Irish. They dominated that game from start to finish. They are legit, and their playoff hopes are alive. And that win in a hostile Notre Dame environment, to me, propels them into our top 4 over Penn State, who, yes, is still 5-0, who, yes, just blanked Indiana 24-0. But again, I feel like Cincinnati has the better resume victory on their resume right now with that win over Notre Dame on the road versus Penn State, whose best victory, not taking anything away from it, but best victory right now is Auburn in Happy Valley. Again, you can make the case for Penn State to be 4, but I like Cincinnati there right now. We talked about Penn State, Oklahoma in at number 6. It actually moved up 3 spots in our Gridiron Expert rankings. We had that at 9 last week. A major reason they're up at 6 is because of how many teams in our top 10 lost. Not to say that Oklahoma played any better. They only beat Kansas State 37-31. So basically every game but one has been decided by 1 possession for Oklahoma. But they moved up 3 spots because of just who lost in front of them. And the Sooners seem to be getting a little bit better. They were beating Kansas State by 17 before things got a little scary at the end. But they have a major test against Texas coming up this Saturday. And that's really going to make or break Oklahoma's season. We're going to see what the Sooners are made of. Arguably their toughest test they face all year long is now Texas on Saturday. They win that, and they win it convincingly. Oklahoma, maybe we were wrong about them. They lose, everybody's going to be right about them, saying they're overrated and not even make the college football playoff. Oklahoma at 6 for now. Let's see what happens against Texas and Dallas. Michigan in at number 7. They're 5-0. Some will say that's way too high, and I disagree. The Wolverines made a statement by going into Wisconsin and winning that game. And you're going to say, it's Wisconsin. They're not that good. Why does it matter? The thing with Wisconsin is we still know how good their rushing defense is, right? They got annihilated by Notre Dame in week 4, but held Notre Dame to what? Like 9 rushing yards on 32 carries? Michigan's strength was running the football. Michigan went into Camp Randall Stadium, rushed for over 100 yards, and Cade McNamara, their quarterback, a guy who we really hadn't seen much of this year, lit them up, threw for over, 250 yards, beat Wisconsin by 21 points on their home turf. Michigan might be the real deal this year. Everybody talks about how overhyped they are and how they disappoint every year under Jim Harbaugh, but they're 5-0. They're playing phenomenal football. Their defense is legit. Their run game is legit. To rush for over 100 yards on Wisconsin at their house is not an easy feat. Not many teams, if any, could do that. So yes, Wisconsin might not be elite. They might not be what we thought they would be, but to win on the road as a slight favorite. Remember, Michigan went from a slight favorite to a slight underdog. That line was very, very small, but for a team that was higher ranked than the Badgers, they were not favored by much. To win by 21, very impressive. I like the Wolverines in at number 7. I like them as a top 10 team. Oregon in at 8. They fell to Stanford. They dropped 5 spots in our rankings. They were number 3. They were number 3 in the AP poll. We have them in at 8th. To me, that loss to Stanford is bad. It was a bad loss. Controversial for some. Stanford getting that last-second touchdown, literally on an untimed down, and then winning in overtime. But this does not ruin Oregon's season. It does not ruin their playoff hopes, and it shouldn't. Stanford was a solid team. They started to pick up a little bit of steam, hung with UCLA, beat USC, right? So this is a Stanford team that seems to be finding their groove and usually typically plays Oregon tough. So I don't think this ruins Oregon. I didn't think they deserved to fall out of the top 10. I like them in at number 8. I like them over Ohio State still. Because unlike maybe the playoff committee, unlike maybe the AP poll, we still honor the head-to-head result. Oregon won against Ohio State. They won that game in Columbus. They deserve to be ranked over Ohio State, with the 2 teams, of course, sharing the same record, both at 4-1. Ohio State in at 9. They defeated Rutgers 52-13 just last week. They're up 4 spots. We had them outside our top 10 last week at 13. Again, people lost ahead of Ohio State, so that propelled them up, but that was one of the best performances we've seen from the Buckeyes this season. Again, some will say it's just Rutgers, but it's an improving Rutgers program. And Ohio State torched them in Piscataway. So the Buckeyes back in at number 9, back into the top 10. BYU rounding out our top 10. Some might disagree with that, but again, because of how our rankings were lined up, we had BYU at 14 last week, and because of the teams that lost in front of them, we feel that they are a top 10 team as of now. Based on our rankings and based on really no one else behind them, I feel deserving of a top 10 spot. BYU comes in at 10. They beat Utah State 34-20. That win over Arizona State looking better by the day. Arizona State just upset UCLA this last week. The Cougars up 4. Big game against Boise State on Saturday to really show if they are top 10 caliber or not. So that's your top 10, guys, and that's the area we focus on the most, because really, to me, I feel like the top 10 is what people care about the most. We kind of spend the most time talking about that. But that's your top 10. Guarantee you it's going to be shooken up a little bit when we go into week 7 and we put out these rankings next Monday. But that's the top 10 for us as of now. Going a little quicker in these final 2 columns. Oklahoma State in at number 11. The Cowboys are 5-0. I think they're the second best team in the Big 12 right now, behind Oklahoma, and the gap between Oklahoma State, maybe even Texas, very thin from each one. But the Cowboys have just won their second straight game over a top 25 team. They beat Kansas State 2 weeks ago. They just beat Baylor this last Saturday, defeating the Bears by 10. They're legit to me. And we've moved them up 6 spots in our rankings. We had them at 17th last week. I think they're 11th right now because they look good. Spencer Sanders struggled, but their defense picked up the slack and their rushing game picked up the slack. Oklahoma State's a team that, to me, is finding their groove and has a complete enough team where if one guy struggles, if the run game struggles, Sanders is going to step up. If Sanders struggles, the run game is going to step up. And that rushing defense for Oklahoma State is the real deal. They can shut down just about anybody on the run, and we saw that when they limited Baylor to just a little over 100 rushing yards on the day. So I like the Cowboys at 11. I like Arkansas at 12. Arkansas is not overrated. Ole Miss is not overrated. Those 2 teams played the top 2 teams in the country, got blown out in both, and just because they lost those games does not mean that they are bad, does not mean they didn't deserve their spot. It just means that obviously Georgia and Alabama are in a league of their own. Arkansas, yes, lost 37-0 to Georgia. They still own a victory over Texas by 19 points. They still own a victory over Texas A&M, who, yes, has fallen out of our top 25, has fallen out of the AP poll, but still impressive for a Razorbacks program that struggled for really the last 5 years. No one expected them to beat Georgia. They've dropped 6 spots in our rankings. I know they dropped about 4 or 5 in the AP poll, but this is still a top 15 team in Arkansas, and they have a chance to continue to prove that with a game against Ole Miss coming up, and a game against Auburn after that. The Razorbacks in at number 12. We got Michigan State in at 13. Some think they should be above the Razorbacks, maybe even above Oklahoma State. Michigan State is an excellent football team. They're coming off a 17-point victory over Western Kentucky. We have them moving up 3 spots in our rankings. We have them at 16th last week, 13th now. They really haven't defeated anybody noteworthy. Blowout win over Northwestern. Blowout win over Miami, which looked good then, but Miami not looking too hot now. Obviously beating Western Kentucky. Overtime victory over Nebraska. Again, nothing to take away from Mel Tucker's squad. I believe Michigan State is for real. I believe they're going to pull off a handful of upsets in the Big Ten East with the likes of Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State all in that same division. It's wide open right now. But I don't believe they are above Arkansas. I do not believe they're above Oklahoma State. I don't believe they're even above BYU. But Michigan State is, seriously, guys, the real deal. They really are. We've got Notre Dame in at 14. The Fighting Irish dropping 7 spots in our rankings after the loss to Cincinnati. We mentioned that when we talked about Cincinnati in the top 10. Notre Dame committing 3 turnovers, finding themselves down 17 early, or 17 at halftime, I believe it was, to Cincinnati at home. Again, guys, I'm not saying the Fighting Irish can't work their way back into the playoff discussion. If they win out, they certainly can do that. But we knew Notre Dame really hadn't looked all that impressive this season. Narrow victory over Florida State. Narrow victory over Toledo. Didn't look all that impressive against Purdue. Looked impressive against Wisconsin, but let's keep in mind that 21 of those points came off of turnovers and came off of 2 pick sixes and a special teams touchdown. Again, not to say that's bad, not to say we should take anything away from that. But you factor a lot of things in there, and I'm not saying Notre Dame's overrated at all, but I am saying they're not top 10 caliber. At least not right now. So I have a lot of things to work on. And we saw them get exploited pretty bad at home against South Bend. And everybody's calling me a Notre Dame hater. Everybody's calling me a Notre Dame hater. Far from it. Look at our Notre Dame picks. We've been the most pretty accurate with our Notre Dame picks lately. We picked Cincinnati to beat Notre Dame. This doesn't mean we're a Notre Dame hater. It just means we're right. Notre Dame in at 14. Coastal Carolina in at 15. The Chanticleers are 5-0. They beat ULM 59-6, as they should. Road game at Arkansas State this Thursday, and you can expect maybe a similar result to that ULM game because it's Arkansas State's defense pretty bad. But you can see them back on national television. The Chanticleers, a chance to continue to work up in our rankings. And hey, if Cincinnati were to slip up somewhere, Coastal could then move into that discussion of New Year's Six bowl game. Cincinnati has their eyes on playoff. Coastal can't get to that point, but they can get to a New Year's Six bowl game if the opportunity comes their way. So Coastal in at 15. Ole Miss at 16, 3-1. Again, they dropped 5 spots in our rankings after the loss to Alabama. Arkansas dropped 6. So don't freak out thinking we dropped Ole Miss more than we did Arkansas. Based on our rankings, Arkansas actually dropped more than we did for the Rebels. Ole Miss losing 42-21. Remember, Arkansas travels to Ole Miss this Saturday. Which team will be more hungover after rough losses, again, to the top two teams in the country? Wake Forest in at 17. They're 5-0. They beat Louisville 37-34. Wake Forest right now leads the Atlantic Division in the ACC. They moved up 5 spots for us. They were 22nd last week, moved them up 5 because of teams losing ahead of them. And obviously because this Wake Forest team, I do believe is for real. It's just going to be a matter of how do they respond to the back half of their schedule. Remember, we talked about in the preseason that Wake Forest could start 6-0, 7-1, somewhere around there. But those final 4 or 5 games, that was going to dictate their season, whether it could be really special or just mediocre again. Right now, it's looking like it can be pretty special. Demon Deacons in at 17. Kentucky in at 18. New to our rankings, 5-0. Just beat Florida in Lexington for the first time since 1986. Took down the Gators 20-13. Remember, the Gators were 10th in our rankings, 10th in the AP poll. Kentucky is the real deal. And Kentucky is the second best team in the SEC East and arguably the toughest test to Georgia in the SEC East. Do we think the Wildcats can beat them? No, absolutely not. I don't know if anybody can. But they are the second best team in that division. And they are 5-0 for just the 4th time in the last 70 years. Mark Stoops doing a phenomenal job with the Wildcats. Huge win over Florida. Put them up at 18. They are a top 20 team. Can they keep the momentum going at home against LSU this Saturday? Texas in at 19. 4-1. Took down TCU. They're up 6. Had them barely in our top 25 last week. But again, ever since they made that move to Casey Thompson, the Longhorns have been rolling. Big opportunity to continue to roll and to continue to make a statement nationally and in the Big 12 when they take on Oklahoma on Saturday. Florida dropped 10 spots for us, 3-2 after the loss to Kentucky. Again, Florida to me is still a top 25 team. It's the loss to Kentucky and a 2-point loss to Alabama. The talent is there for Florida. They beat themselves against Kentucky. The Wildcats were the better team. I'm not saying that. The Wildcats were the better team and deserved to win that game. But self-inflicted wounds, the penalties, the blocked field goal, all of that going into play, Florida is still a talented team, but not top 10 caliber anymore, down to number 20. Final column, Auburn in at 21, 4-1. They would not be ranked right now had they lost to LSU. They were not ranked for us last week. But the win over LSU was gutsy. It was a gutsy win. It was Auburn's first win in Death Valley since 1999. They defeated the Tigers 24-19. Bo Nix played a phenomenal football game after getting benched the week before against Georgia State. Came back, won the game in the final minutes for the Tigers. Huge, huge win for Auburn, who takes on Georgia this Saturday on the Plains. So Auburn back in our rankings at 21. NC State moving up 1 spot with a 7-point victory over Louisiana Tech. They had an opportunity to move up more, but as 19.5-point favorites, they only beat the Bulldogs by 7. Again, big win over Clemson, maybe a bit of a Clemson hangover because they won. But NC State still a contender in the Atlantic for sure, but not as high as their counterpart in Wake Forest. And then, of course, Arizona State in at 23. They took down number 20, UCLA, 42-23. So not just a victory, but a dominating victory at that. Jaden Daniels, this defense playing phenomenal ball for Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils. Again, they very well could win the Pac-12 South. Many believe they would do it in the preseason. Now with the Pac-12 South not looking too hot, UCLA starting to fall off, USC obviously starting to fall off. Arizona State is that favorite. They are in our top 25. SMU in at 24. They're 5-0, defeated USF by 24 this last week. Do have a quality win on the road against TCU, beating them 42-34 a few weeks ago. This offense, per usual under Sonny Dykes, is very, very difficult to stop. And SMU could be a threat to maybe Cincinnati and their playoff hopes later on this season. And of course, finally, Baylor in at 25 for us. The Bears were 4-1. We had them at 21 last week, 21st in the country, so we have them dropping 4. I still believe Baylor is a top 25 team. And also, when I look at teams that aren't ranked, that are receiving votes, both in our eyes and the AP poll, I don't believe many of them, if any, are better than Baylor. Baylor is still a very good team. They're still a very balanced offensive team. They hung with Oklahoma State in Stillwater. They were down 14-0, battled back, only trailed 17-14, gave up that late touchdown that ultimately put the game away. But Baylor is a good football team across the board. And they have a chance to get back on track with a winnable home game against West Virginia. I still believe they're a top 25 team. Barely, but they still are. And Dave Aranda will prove that again, I believe, with a win over West Virginia. Spoiler alert, with a win over West Virginia in Waco on Saturday morning. So there you go, guys. There is our Gridiron Expert Top 25 heading into Week 6. We're anxious to hear your thoughts. Leave your thoughts below. Who's too high? Who's too low? Who should be ranked that isn't? We want to hear from you because, again, it's going to be another wild weekend of college football. We have 3 or 4 ranked versus ranked matchups. Of course, we're going to see other upsets in there because why wouldn't we? It's been one of the wildest seasons of college football that I have ever seen, that I'm sure you have ever seen. And, of course, that is the fun of it. So when we come back next Monday, these rankings will look completely different, and we're looking forward to it. That's exactly what we want to see. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And of course, check out everything down in the description below. Again, go sign up for those expert picks today before we put out our Week 6 analysis. Again, it will be one of the best decisions you make all season long. If you haven't done that already, sign up over on the gridironexpert.com. Those expert picks, link down in the description. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.